Okay, welcome to the College of Complexes. This is our 391st meeting since we started in February 2009. We put a different speaker on every week, a different subject. We require a speaker to take a position on an issue or express a point of view. They have to be for or against something. We don't care what it is. We give an hour to make a presentation. If they go over an hour, we cut them off. If anybody interrupts the speaker, remind the interrupter we listen to only one fool at a time, one of our rules. Then we have questions and answers from the audience, not speeches of the speaker. Then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everyone in this audience that wants to gets 5 minutes at the podium here to respond to the speaker said for or against. Now the speaker gets the last word, gets a comment, and close the meeting. That's how it works. But before we put on our speaker, we have time for announcements. Anybody have any announcements they want to make? Now's the time to do it. Do you want an announcement to make, Jim?
Nope, not me.
Is that Jim?
Not tonight.
No announcements? I can't believe this. No announcements.
All right. Continue.
Do you have an announcement you want to make?
Oh, the party.
Yes,
Party.
I handed them
Well,
out.
yeah, you want to make an announcement?
Oh, well, everybody's included. And of course, it says bring a friend, and each one of you got a little green invitation.
All right.
And Tom is going to.
Somebody needs to read the green
No,
invitation.
they're going to be out of town. And Tom and Susan are going to be at an exciting place on
Somebody needs to
Christmas.
read the
They're
green
gonna be at
invitation.
All right.
Trumpland.
Anyway, that's the announcement. Our speaker next week is Liz.
What?
Liz Jones. Liz James. She's going to talk about a serious question of CEO compensation, stock option, and benefits. I can read,
Pay them more.
but I'll put them on anyway. My wife's reminding me I need to wear glasses.
You better behave.
Yeah, I gotta watch. Anyway, and December 16th, Paul Benson, professor of humanities, Mountain View College, will be here. He'll be talking about why Dallas, untangling the mystery of Dallas's rise to prominence. Should be interesting.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's on your itinerary also. I'm not gonna read all this. Our speaker tonight is Wanda Zamorano, if I said that right.
You're close.
She will discuss her personal experience, her role and journey of educating, empowering, and inspiring a group that is often forgotten. She will talk about a genuine role with the homeless, with examples of those she worked with in 2-area shelters. She will outline services and visions of each shelter. One will argue that we can make a difference, changing lives one meal at a time and giving hope for the future. She further contends that you will open your mind to become inspired by virtually meeting some of the homeless in action. So without further ado, please give a very, very warm welcome to Wanda J.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I love this group. Y'all remind me of when I taught junior high. I taught 33 years, and when I got here, and I met you guys and everything. So y'all have made me feel at home already. So thank you very much. Yes, indeed. All right.
So we're a junior high mentality?
Listen, those kids were smart, and y'all are too. There we go. Perfect. To the woman who referred to people experiencing homelessness as human debris, here are some of the voices of those you equate with trash. I am the soldier who fought for this country and for you. Debris? No, I am not debris. Though people like you make me feel like it. I am an addict. Yes, I spend some of the money you give me on my next fix. I need it just like the millions of addicts sitting in homes all across America need their next drink, Oxycontin, or snort of cocaine. I have suffered with mental illness for 30 years, and there is no cure. Do you have any conditions for which there is no cure? I can think of one right off the bat. I am your neighbor who fell on hard times. I am a teenager whose parents abandoned me. I am the girl who suffered unspeakable abuse from an upstanding citizen. I am the father who lost his job and his dignity. I have a full-time job and live in my car. I am all people. I am you, had it not been for the grace of God. What I'd like for you to do now is to meet some of the folks that I work with just about every week. We meet every Thursday night. And so please meet my new friends, the DallasStreetChoir.org.
It'll take just a moment to get this queued up here.
Okay.
Oh boy, it went back, it defaulted, and now it wants a password. Let's see if I can go ahead and get it as a guest.
Deep sleep.
I don't know what the password is.
Oh,
I'll
you
try.
got the lights.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you have to get it from the waitress.
Yeah, sorry about this, it went dead and then
That went to sleep on us.
it went more than asleep.
Just go right ahead. While we're waiting for it to wake up, I will share this with you that
Here's the password.
one of the shelters that I work at, it's Many Helping Hands. In fact, the shirt that I have on is from the Many Helping Hands group. And we are in Irving, and right now we are at the Good Shepherd Lutheran Church. And every Thursday night, we feed between 100 and 150 folks. And the youngest that we have there is about 6 weeks old, and we have them all the way into their 80s. And they have become some very, very dear friends to me. And I'll share some of those experiences in just a little bit. And John, you just tell me when you get ready.
Keep talking.
Okay,
and I'll give you a
I
cue.
can certainly keep talking. The other shelter I work at is called Our Calling, and it's here in Dallas on Cesar Chavez Boulevard. And I'll be talking more about those in just a little bit. My partner at dinner asked me how I got started. Well, trust me, I didn't know this time last year that I was going to be doing this, but it's a delight. I do a lot of volunteer work. I taught in the Hurst Bedford ISD for 33 years, and I retired in 2004, and I volunteer somewhere 7 days a week. And so this past April, the League of Women Voters had a candidate forum, and living in Irving, we had the mayors there, the candidates, we had the school board members, and we had the city council members. Well, one of the questions that was asked of them, what are you doing for the homeless in Irving?
Now, doctor.
Well, Denise Webb, who is on our city council, said, and by the way, he is a minister at Bear Creek Community Church, and he said, at my church, we feed them once a week. And he said there are other churches in town that feed the homeless as well. And I know you're going to tell me. So Dennis Webb told everybody that night, we had a room full, and he said, your attitude toward homelessness starts right here. It starts in the heart. And prior to this time in our history in Irving, we have not had any homeless folks in Irving. Did you know that? Mm-hmm. Well, we have. And so we finally are doing something about it.
Okay.
Okay? So meet some of my friends, and then we're going to talk about some of them.
Still
in
gonna
more
take a
detail.
second here to get
Okay.
this
Good.
up properly here.
And especially notice that little short girl that has the green beads. Her name is Carolyn, and I've got some stories to tell you, and I got Carolyn's permission to share some of the stories tonight.
Okay,
Okay.
Jim, can you man the sound there on input 3? And,
The Dallas Street Choir is headed up by Dr. John Halland, and he is at the Stew Pot, and so that's where they practice on a regular basis, is there at the Stew Pot in downtown Dallas.
okay, are we ready to go?
You bet.
Okay, give it very little.
Yeah, I know,
Start.
tiny
Okay.
amount.
All right, very tiny amount, and here we go. Almost.
Get out of your mouth, I don't think I can sing, but
We were sleeping on benches,
That's too loud.
sleeping on the sidewalks.
Bring it down some.
Homelessness is, to me, it makes you humble
that?
yourself.
That's good.
And you do go through struggles, you do go through suffering, but in that struggles and suffering, there's something that come out which is good. There are some people that sleep on the street that are doing drugs or prostitution. They basically want to stay there. Well, me and my husband, we not that. We want to come off the streets. I can almost see it. I'm dreaming, but there's a voice inside my head saying, you never reach it. Every step I'm taking, every move I'm making, walks in no direction. My faith is shaking, but I gotta keep trying. Gotta keep my head high. Sometimes you get another mountain, always gonna make it move. Always gonna get uphill battle. Sometimes I'm gonna have to lose. Ain't about how fast I get there. Ain't about what's waiting something lifting off of you. You know, all the stress, all the tension, or whatever you're going through that day. It's like it's out the window. Music is a therapy.
And you might have read in the newspaper this past summer, Dr. John Pallant took this group to Carnegie Hall. They performed in Carnegie Hall. And I will tell you this, before they went, they were so excited and so nervous because they didn't know if they were going to fit in, if they would have the proper attire and all that kind of stuff. And so we made sure that they fit in. And they were there with other street people too. And I was so glad that they didn't call it the homeless choir. It's called street choir. And so they perform on a regular basis around here. They're just absolutely awesome. I'd like to go back and talk to you more about the many helping hands and how I got started. Well, Dennis Webb told everybody in the room that night that what his church did and what other churches were doing. And that night, I went home, and having taught reading for 33 years, I thought, you know, we're feeding their bellies, and that's wonderful. I'm glad that we're feeding their bellies. But we need to be feeding their intellect and their spiritual needs, their emotional needs. We need to be doing that. And so I thought, we need to get a book in everybody's hands. By the way, we have over 12,000 homeless right here in Dallas, and it continues to grow. We still have people here from Katrina, and we have people now from Harvey and Irma, and they have nothing to go back to. And so I suspect that population is going to continue to grow. And I'm going to give you a little side note because am involved in a lot of different things, and I thought I just couldn't believe it. Last year, I learned that we have 434 girls every night in Dallas, ages 13 through 17, who are pimped out. Either the parents are doing it for drug money, or for favors, and this, that, and the other. And that's only 13 through 17. And then those girls, many of them go to school the next day. And so some of the schools have started putting in washers and dryers because they discovered that some of the kids wouldn't go to school because the other children made fun of them for smelling and that sort of thing. And so our schools are taking more and more on of the parental roles. And I'll just give you a Reader's Digest version here. When I had that revelation in April that we needed to get books in everybody's hands, the next morning I had an email in my mailbox from Half Price Books, and they were inviting teachers to please come to the one on 75 in Northwest Highway and get 3 boxes of books for your students. Yes. Well, they said that we needed a number, a tax number. So I contacted one of my friends on the school board in Irving, and he was able to give me the tax number. To make a long story short, I went over to Half Price. I got those books, but those books were needed at Family Place by Parkland Hospital. And so that first load of books that I got went there because there was a need there. Their budget had been slashed. And so they needed some books, and I got word of that. Well, then I got in touch with the people at Northwest Highway, and if you go there, please tell the manager Colby and Amanda how much we appreciate them. Because ever since April, until now, and they're going to continue. They give books. And I have distributed over 7,000 books since May. Yeah. All different kinds of books. And it has been very, very rewarding. Now, I knew that we needed more than just the books here, so I went to Half Price Books in Louisville, and they also supplies with books. And now the Friends of the Irving Public Library give me books. Well, Judge Janine Howard found out that we were needing books, so I've gone to her place twice to pick up books. I've driven to Saginaw, wherever I need to go to get these books. And the least favorite of the books that are selected are the romance and the fiction. Most of the folks love to read nonfiction. As a matter of fact, when we had there at the Many Helping Hands at that church where we feed them, I have a section in the back, and I have all these books laid out, and I've got people there helping me and whatnot. And I'll never forget this. One time I had a book there. It was Princess Diana, and one of my homeless lady saw that, and she grabbed that book and just started shaking, and she ran up and down every aisle. Princess Diana! She was so excited to get that book. Another thing, one of my guys reads in French, and he said, "Could you get me some French novels?" And I said, "Let me see what I can do." And so the Friends of the Public Library helped me out there. We have a homeless pallet. And when I brought in a stack of magazines that had to do with aeronautics and flights and B-52 and all kinds of stuff in these magazines, that man was so excited. And he was kind of bent, and he was on a walker. "Come on in." Okay. And he, and not a walker, a cane, I beg your pardon. And he was so excited to get those magazines, and he said, "I can't take them all tonight because they're heavy for me. Will you save them and I'll get the rest next week?" And I said, "Sure." And every week we have new books. We have churches, we have everybody donating books. I have not bought one book out of my own money, but I do buy gas, a lot of it. Just so I can run around and pick up all these books. And I don't know if you know Elaine Hooper with our group at Liberal Ladies, but she has donated a lot of stuff too. And we also have clothes there for the kids and for the adults as well. And we always have a shortage of men's clothing. And so we just have everything there at that church for the folks to get what they need. Another very, very interesting thing that happened a couple of months ago, this young man came up to me and he said, "Do you have anything by William Shakespeare?" And I looked at him and I said, "Not here, but I do at home." I said, when I was in college in the 60s at Sullivan State University out in the Alpine, I took a Shakespeare class. And I said, that book's about that thick. It's the complete works, and it's like that. And he said, "I would love to have that book." And I thought, why am I hanging on to that book, for somebody to take care of when I pass, when I could go ahead and give it to this young man? And so sure enough, the next week, I brought that. He wept. He was so excited to get that book. And so when folks think that these people, don't care, they're not educated and this sort of thing, they are extremely bright. Now, most of the folks that we have either they have been addicts or they still are, or the mental hospitals have closed and the clinics, and there's no place for them to go. About 13% are veterans, and they have some needs as well. And I read last year where they're trying to do something more to help our veterans when they come back from Afghanistan and other places to make the adjustment. And I was really, really glad that we're making more of an effort to prepare them, because I can only imagine what it would be like to be in that situation and then to come back to the States. So we have all different kinds of folks, who are there, and I always have children's books because we always have children. And so we have a section there for our kids to read, and the adults as well. And here's the deal with the books. I said, you take that book, read it. If you want to keep it, keep it. If you want to pass it on to somebody, because some of the homeless we see one time, and I say, if you want to pass it on, that's fine. If you want to bring it back and get another book, that's fine too. Well, we have this one family, and if I have any books at all left over, they will take those books and give it to other people in their community. I could say a lot more about that. Carolyn, one of the ladies there, and I got her permission to share this story. She's in a transitional home, and they've gone up on the rent, and she doesn't have the money for it. And so she asked me if anybody that I knew of, if they had a tent, because she was going back to the streets, and she had been on the streets for 7 years. I don't ask them their history. It's none of my business. I do know that that Carolyn was sincere, and she needed a tent. So I made it my business to get her a tent a little while back. And a couple of weeks ago, she came up to me and she said, "Guess what, Miss Wanda? Guess what I did with that tent?" And I said, "Well, what, Carolyn?" And she said, "My son got married, and they are riding their bicycles to Colorado for their honeymoon. And I have loaned them my tent so they'll have some place to stay en route to Colorado and when they come back." And then she said, "But I'm getting my tent back." But instead of getting a bridal suite, like many of us in this room would get, that's what she had to offer her son, was a tent. And she was very, very happy and proud to be able to do that. And I was glad for her. Can I tell you, just be candid with you tonight? I want to tell you about one of the guys that I work with. And he built up some trust with me. It was about 2 months after I'd started going to the Many Helping Hands. And he pulled me to the side one night and he said, "Miss Wanda, we have a need." He said, "I work with the homeless every night in downtown Dallas, and I try to make sure that they behave themselves and don't end up going to jail and that sort of thing." And he said, "But we need something." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, Raquel, what is it that you need?" And he said, "We need some male and female condoms." Kids, I didn't even know that there were female condoms. But I played it cool, like I knew what was going on. And I said, "Well, Raquel, I tell you what, you write this information down, and I'm fixing to have dinner with Judge Brendan Birmingham." And I said, "I'm going to talk to him and see what we need to do about this." And so sure enough, I did, and I pulled the judge to the side. I didn't want to embarrass him in front of everybody. And he said, "Why don't you call the Human and Health Services and see if they can help you, and if they can't, well, you get back with me." So sure enough, I called in, and they could not have been nicer. They said not only does it help with birth control, but they said the spread of disease. And so they said, come on down, we'll have some ready for you. Well, y'all, I did. I drove down and parked my car, went inside, knocked on the door where they told me to go, and I was expecting a little box. It was a box about like that, about that big, and it had my name all over it. And so the man who helped me get all that to the car he put it out there like it was groceries. And he said, Miss Wanda, I put your name on here so you'd be sure to get it. And I thought, well, thank you. And then he put it in the trunk of my car, and he said, now, whenever you need more, just to call and this and that. Well, y'all, I raced cars when I was in high school, and I deserve a ticket every time I get behind that wheel. And I thought, if I'm stopped, they're going to think I'm in some kind of business. And I had a bunch of books in the trunk, and so what I did was I got some of those books and put them on top of those condoms in case I got stopped. And that was just the funniest story. You just never know what's going to happen from one week to the other. Okay, I'm trying to keep up with my time because I know that I have several things that I want to share. So we served between 100 and 150 every Thursday night, even in Thanksgiving last week. I was in West Texas, but one of my friends, Judge Janine Howard, emailed me and said, Wanda, can I come and help with the homeless? And I said, you bet. And so I told her where to go, and she took a ham and some sweet potatoes. And so everybody knows if you're my friend, regardless of what you are, and whether you're a judge or whether you're retired or whatever, you're going to go to work. You're going to do something. We're going to participate, and we're going to get on with this program, whether it's this or whether it's anything else that I've got going, with the senior citizens or whatever. So I'm thrilled that people volunteer to help, and they are always there, right there for me. And we have a couple who asked me for some parenting books because they wanted to be better parents, and so I got some books for them. My point is they want to better their lives, and so if they want to, I'm going to be right there to try to help them. Now, one of the other things, I am a big proponent of voting, and so I went to the tax office and I went to the postal system to find out how I could register homeless people to vote. And they told me it took a little legwork, but on the application, on the voter application, this can be overwhelming for somebody just to look at that. So what I did was I prepared a cheat sheet, is what I call it. And I have one in English and in Spanish. And on this little cheat sheet, it tells exactly what they need to fill out, what they can omit. And what I found out was on the residents, they can put the bridge at 635 in Oak Lawn. And then what the tax people do, they look and see what precinct that's in, and then by hand, they write it in, and then they send this to general delivery. I thought every post office had general delivery. They don't. There's one in Dallas, and so I list that, and there's one in Irving, and they have a separate zip code. So even though I'm a retired teacher, I still am learning as much as ever, because I didn't know that. So this population has taught me a lot. I hope that they have benefited some too. But I have this in English and Spanish. Now, I'm very busy in politics, and so I have given this information to a lot of politicians here in Dallas County so they can help the Spanish population and also help with other populations as well. So that's where that empower comes in that we try to do, and then we try to get them excited about life and doing the best that they can with what they have, and they do a beautiful job of that. Carolyn had invited me to come and hear that choir. They were singing at the Munger Place Church, and I had never been there. I live in Irving, and I said, Carolyn, I would love to come. So I went. That was one of the best church services I have ever been to in my life. I mean, everybody was involved, and they were singing and this and that. And so I thought, you know, I'm going to take a bouquet to Carolyn because she's singing up there in that choir. And so when she came down, I was there at the end of the stairs, and I gave her a bouquet of flowers. And she said, I have never gotten flowers before. So I certainly was glad that some little birdie or something told me to do that. And then later she said, and Miss Wanda, when I got on that bus to go back to the stew pot, I went up and down and let everybody smell of my flowers. So she was very, very proud to get those. Another one of the ladies stands about like that, and her hair's about that long, and she walks like this, kind of like I do, being the farm girl. And she said, Miss Wanda, I'm going to be in a fashion show. You want to come? And I said, well, yeah, I do. And so, sure enough, I went to DeSoto to her fashion show, and y'all, she looked beautiful that day. She was just gorgeous. And she was so pleased that somebody came to see her in that fashion show. A lot of the people there at the shelter tell us we're the only family that they have, and the only time they get a hug is when we hug them, and we try to make them feel very important because they are, and they definitely have something to offer. You saw what a lot of them do right there. So it has been a blessing. The Irving police officer who comes every Thursday night he heads up the domestic violence section of the Irving Police Department, and he has bonded with these folks. He sits there and he doesn't charge one thing for being there, whereas other folks often do, some of the other police officers. And not only does he give up his time to be there, he tithes to the many helping hands because he believes in the program so very much. This time last year, I didn't know any of these people. I didn't know any of this stuff that was going on, but I have been very blessed. And I've been involved in the fundraisers, and that has really been a blessing as well. And I have got an exhibit in the back, and I hope that you guys will take a look at some of those things and even ask me questions about that. This is what the Many Helping Hands folks say. Our vision is to have a permanent day resource center for the homeless and needy in our city. This permanent facility would include showers, laundry facilities, office and meeting space for caseworkers, counseling, support groups, AA, and so forth, and would be open throughout the week. And so that's what Irving is working toward. Now Dallas has one. We have one here in Dallas called Our Calling. And I have brought a book that I'll share with everybody. I want you to have it in case you need to reference it, or you want to give it to a police officer, or even to a homeless person. So why don't we go ahead, and I would like to just point out some things. If you'll take one and pass it back, and if you'll take one on this side and pass it back.
Oh, these are nice.
Yeah, yes. This is one of the best resource books that I've seen. And here, yeah. Tom, here's your these are excellent little resource books, and Our Calling is the only one in Dallas that has this huge facility. And when you walk in, it looks like a big Starbucks with all the tables and everything. They've got coffee, they've got lemonade. They have a section where I take my books, and folks come over there and get the books, and then they go and sit down. And they drink their coffee, drink their lemonade, and they read. And that does this reading teacher's heart good to see everybody reading. I think that's wonderful. Just want to point out some things, and this is yours to keep. When you first open it up, well, you can see down at the bottom, it says a guide for the homeless in Dallas County to shelters, food, medical care, and more. Right off the bat, they have the hotline numbers right there. And so I keep a stack of these in my car, and I have books and usually water. And so if I see a homeless person, that's what I try to give them. And so if they have a need for any of those hotline numbers, and most of them have access to a phone, even at Our Calling, they've got phones and whatnot in there for them to use. And then I'm not going to read all of this to you, but Pastor Wayne there is just absolutely wonderful. And it gives, there on page 4, it gives all of the things that they offer there at Our Calling, the 12-step recovery classes and so forth. I went with the Our Calling group in a van on a Saturday this past summer. And my job was to pass out books, but many people will not go to the shelters for one reason or the other. And y'all, that clump of trees right in front of American Airlines Center, there by the DART, a train,
Yeah.
if you go way back in there, you'll meet a couple and their dog. Some of the sweetest folks in the world, but they don't go to the shelter for whatever reason. And that's none of my business why they don't go. I don't try to get up in their business. We have over 1,000 places in Dallas where these folks are. Either behind the gas station, behind the liquor store, in those trees. And I've been working with the homeless now for quite some time. And I was going to the Kalita Humphreys Theater, and I was exiting Oakland and 35, and there was a red light there, as many of you know. And so when I was stopped there, well, I looked up, and there was a homeless lady, and she looked at me, and she said, "Miss Wanda," and I said, "Doris." And so we just had a little hug right there at the red light. And so I have gotten to know a lot of these folks, and I am so glad that they feel like that they can hug, that we can talk, and we're real. It's important for us just to be real with everyone. And so that brought me a lot of joy. But not everybody goes to the shelter. And just there on 5 and 6, you can see Our Calling, the weekly schedule. And you can get a hot meal somewhere here in Dallas 7 days a week. And it says the daily meal providers, and some of you may even be involved in helping. I don't know. And then on medical care, AIDS, HIV, general health, mental health, pregnancy, substance abuse, even church services. But what I like, right here in the middle, when I hand a homeless person this book, they can look right here and see where the nearest place is where they can go get a hot meal. And so this is invaluable. Whoever put this together is a genius. They put some really good information in there. And you can get as many of these as you want. They're 50 cents a piece, and you can get them at our column. The address is on the back. And then there are resources listed there as well. Even Department of Veteran Affairs, because you heard me say that about 13 or 14% of our folks are veterans. And then it has the Austin Street Center. Somebody mentioned the bridge earlier. Union Gospel Mission and the Women's Shelter is there, Salvation Army, and then the index. And this is yours, and you can look at it. In fact, in a little bit, if you have any more questions on that, well, I'll be happy to try to answer those. Okay, so we know that Many Helping Hands is looking for a permanent facility. So if you happen to know somebody in Irving who has a building or they want to help out with that, we would love to talk to them and see if we can get a permanent building, because we do have homeless in Irving. Okay. Oh, when I just love this, for when Carolyn asked me to come to the Munger Street Church, pass that around, Tom. And this is how she invited me to come, and I was very happy to go to that. Okay. Whenever you find yourself doubting how far you can go, just remember how far you have come. Remember everything you have faced, all the battles you have won, and all the fears you have overcome. Thank you.
You get to stay there now.
I have a,
Oh, I see. Okay. I'll just stay right here. Yes, ma'am.
Well, then,
I have
Wait a minute.
okay, my question.
Okay, just a second. Just a second while he gets this hooked up here.
It's in 3?
In 3. Yeah, unplug me there and plug yours back in.
Okay. It looks
Like
like
you're
the same
setting up.
plug.
Okay, just like you're setting up.
My question is, I heard on the radio that Texas had 20,000 homeless, but
Start
you
over.
said that there's
Susan?
12, all right. I heard on the radio last week in PR that there was 20,000 homeless people in the state of Texas, but you just said that we had 12,000 in the city.
In
So,
Dallas.
In Dallas. Do we have the most of all the other cities? I would assume Houston would have a lot because.
I don't know that,
Katrina.
and I am suspect of only 20,000.
Yeah, me too. That seemed very low to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's what I want.
And by the way, the liberal ladies that where you and I met,
Yes.
Kim Morris collected from our group some socks and gloves and sweaters and blankets and coats and all of that. And they were dispensed this morning. We at the Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, we had tables just lined up, and we had the children, the infants, and everybody. And so the folks were able to go in there and just go shopping. And they took what it was that they needed. And it was for the low income folks too. We just opened it up. And so folks, So that liberal ladies group.
Oh, I know, they're activists.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And the things I belong to, they're active, and I appreciate that very, very much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's a question right here.
Tom, Mark, and yes.
Can you tell me how much, what percentage of the people that you're helping are actually getting jobs and getting off the street?
Some of the folks that we're helping right now, they have full-time employment, but you can't make it on minimum wage.
No.
And so it takes their money to pay for like transitional housing. And so they'll come to different places for food and for clothes and that sort of thing. And I know that some of them go to the Texas Motor Speedway and work temporary work there. They do yard work. They work, and some of them are in the food industry. But I'm not sure I could make it on minimum wage.
Nobody could.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
One other question.
Uh-huh.
Can you give me any guidance on whether or not to give these people that are begging on street corners?
I do.
Well, this is what I do. I give them a bottle of water, I give them a book, and I give them that little green book so they can go and get a hot meal. Because, I'm no dummy. I know that some of them would probably go and get a fix and this, that, and the other. But sometimes you just know. You have to listen to your heart and figure out, okay, what can I do to help this person? Because the truth of the matter is, it could be you, and it could be me, it could be anybody in this room. But thanks to God, I had some of the best parents in the whole wide world, and they never raised their voice to any of us kids. We were the most important thing in their lives. Education was supreme, on and on it goes. But I also know, having taught, that that's not true for every person, especially who comes to school. So, and that's I could talk on that subject sometimes too. Yes.
I don't think you probably have any way of measuring this, but I would assume that your effort is probably having a positive effect on the crime rates in Dallas, both by some of these people and against some of these people. I would anticipate that.
I would like to hope that we are educating, empowering, and getting folks involved in the process. One of the things on that cheat sheet I mentioned a while ago has some websites that they can go to and learn about what's going on in Washington and here at the state as well, because I like to have intelligent conversation with these folks and just see what they're all about. And they've taught me a lot. And in fact, it wasn't that long ago, there was somebody here in downtown Dallas, a homeless man who killed somebody. And so one of the homeless gals told me the following week, said, "Oh, I hope that people don't think we're all like that." And I said, they don't. They don't. I said, we have that element in every population, so not just homeless. Okay, other questions?
Yes,
Y'all are asking
yes.
some good ones.
Do you have any more of these to sell with you? Because I
Yes.
would like to buy more. I tried to order this and goofed up when I was placing the order, and it's sitting on my desk, so I'll buy them from you.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Secondly,
Uh-huh.
do you work with Lyft, or can you refer them to Lyft? Literacy information for Texas, because it's very close to where you're functioning downtown.
Oh, right. And that's probably something that I need to because I've heard of Lyft.
It is,
And
Ann Fink, a friend of mine, and John Northley just love their volunteer work. They love it, and they see these people blossom. They suddenly
yeah.
know how to read. Third question, does the public school system, can they refer these girls, can they get CPS involved? Because they're underage, they're being prostituted. in the sex trafficking business, can the school system call in CPS
You
about
bet,
these young
yeah.
girls?
They can, especially, in fact, we're obligated by law.
Yes.
If we see like a bruise or if we see
Yeah.
something that we must. I'm not sure that we have enough, people who could take care of all of that. Yes, ma'am. I will tell you this, because I live in Irving, we've got a home for boys ages 17 through 21. They're homeless boys, and they're going to school. And we have 2 apartments there in Irving for these boys to live in, and hopefully we're going to get some money so we can get an apartment for the girls as well too. And we have 8 seniors who are homeless. They're in the Irving ISD, and what we're trying to do is to raise some money to rent their cap and gown and to give them a graduation party, because they have no family who will be coming to their graduation or give them a party. And so there's a group called Share Tank, not Shark Tank, but Share Tank, and they asked me to address that group, and I'm hoping that we can get some funding for that. And they really like the fact that we're going to invite the entire community because we are their family. And so, we've got to make a difference in these young people's lives as well.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I don't know if I was at the meeting with you when they discussed, the green bicycles or the yellow bicycles. The CEO, I don't know if it's the green or the yellow, is allowing the homeless to use their bikes for free, in that they said that way they're moving around and they're not like loitering where they'll get arrested by the police. Were you with me when it was mentioned, or I heard about it?
Well, I
Yeah,
have heard about
because
that
I see
too.
them all the time on bikes,
Yeah.
everywhere, because I live downtown, yeah. I think that was great. He said, I don't care if they pay or not. Oh, no, I met somebody who told me that, that's it. Okay, yeah, he works from the city. He said that the CEO of I think it was the Green Bike, said he doesn't care if he gets any money, and it helps the city.
And I can promise you that many policemen every day gives somebody some money for some food. And those police officers will never even know, who all they are. So, and not only police, but, together we can. Okay, other questions?
Did you learn something?
Okay, may I just leave you with a thought?
Well, actually, now we can move on to the
Rebuttals.
Comment.
Oh,
You can comment.
okay. I'm glad you're keeping me straight.
We'll do it. We'll do it.
Okay, now it's your turn to talk. So whoever wants to be first, come on up here. Get to respond to what the speaker had to say and so on.
I can get this out of your way.
Thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
Well, I would tell you, as a person who's lived in Dallas here now all of my 77 years, I just managed to reach last week, that I have seen a lot of what our speaker has spoken about. And I've worked with a lot of it. So I'm not just I know I don't look like it to some of you who don't know me, but although I'm a retired downtown CPA, I don't look that role right now. So anyway, I've worked with a lot of people in a lot of casts of life. I've worked with a number of the missions and the homeless shelters with friends. I've fed and I've done a lot of other things. And there's a lot of it that's very worthwhile. I know my wife and I went through a period of time when our children would outgrow their clothes, we would bag them up and take them down there to the big facility that's there just across from from all the Dallas public buildings down there at Interstate 30 and donate the clothes. So there's a lot of things different ones of us can do to help. One of the things I admire about our speaker tonight that I would tell you is she seems to be one of the most willful and uncompromising givers I have come across.
Yeah, she is.
And I say that because I have seen some of the aspects of people who are homeless that are not so good. Well, they're not so pleasing to your esoteric or any other thing you might describe as a person who has traditionally held some kind of a job that's been self-sustaining, and you've lived what would be considered a normal, self-sustaining life here in this city or any other. And I discovered that there were quite a few categories of people who are homeless. Many are doing the kinds of things she described to us tonight. For whatever reason, they have not acquired the skill sets to get a job that is really self-sustaining. So they have to either go live in the shelter if they're only getting intermittent day work, or if they can rent a minimal cover over their head as a little apartment or duplex, or rent a room from someone, and then go and get the clothing and other things, the food that's made available. That's great. It's a working system. There's another category of people, and I would say most often, the people you see standing on the street corners with a handwritten, scrawled sign. While I know, and I would never accuse every one of them of fitting into this category, I just know, after stopping and talking to a lot of them, and then reading an incalculable number of articles about people who have, that a lot of them don't want to work. Now, they may have a record of some sort in their criminal background that makes it hard for them to get a traditional job. But I'll give you one simple example. There was a piece in the morning news one day where this person who was going down to the news to work. And they were driving down Garland Road. They just passed White Rock Lake. They got their work down to where Gaston peels off. And there was one of the traditional hand-painted sign people there on the corner trying to collect some money. And so they said, well, I think I'll do this. They stopped. They offered them a job to come over to their house for a couple of days and do some chores that needed to be done, and told them how much they would pay them, which was probably more than fair amount. And the person thought about it for a minute and said, I really don't want to do that. Now, does everybody think that way? No, but a lot do. A lot of the people who live under the bridges and in the other places on the street, whether they happen to have been affected by being in the war, whether that got them hooked on alcohol or drugs or both, whatever the causal factor was, those can be quite wide and varied. They have the result, residing in their body and in their mind, and they cannot stand to go to the shelter. They don't want anybody to tell them when to come in. They don't want anybody to tell them when to eat dinner. They don't want anybody to tell them we're going to turn out the lights and go to bed. Well, there are people like that all over the planet, Some of us just have that personality. But when you see it in a person who's in need, and you're not in need, you're inclined to say, by George, if you're in need, you ought to give a little bit, you know. You ought to concede a little bit of your wonderful autonomy that you do have as an American citizen in order for somebody else to give up what they have for your benefit. I totally understand that concept, and I agree with it. But I also understand that if they've got some of this messed up here, that may not be within the scope of their ability of thinking to say, I will agree to do this that you asked me to do in order for you to be willing to do that for me, which I need. And so there are people who can make more money standing on the corner bumming than they could make doing little simple day jobs. I go to Casa Linda almost every day since I retired 3.5 years ago. Hang out at Starbucks and do some other things and go to the places. So this little scenario happened here a while back. This couple came over, I bet at least 5 days in a row. And there would be some of us sitting in the sidewalk tables outside. They'd come up and they would tell us the same story, almost memorized verbatim. Our family member is across the street at Doctor's Hospital. We came over to see them. We don't have the money to get on the bus and go home. Could you help us? And so after the first day, we looked at them and we didn't believe a word they said, but we listened to them in a nice way. And the next day they came back and told us the same story, 4 days in a row. So I'll never forget it. The day after that, I had the radio on in the morning, getting ready to go to work. Was listening to Jody Dean on KLUV. And Jody has moved in the neighborhood now, and he'd gone up to the Albertsons there in the Casa Linda Shopping Center. And when he came outside, guess who he encountered? He described them to a T, and he described how much money he handed them and walked away out of guilt that he felt like he should help them. And of course, they were just bumming, to use a crude word, because they were doing the same thing every day, every day, every day. What was the cause of it? I couldn't tell you. I don't know. But it doesn't come across as a way that inspires you to give up anything that's in your possession for them, you know. They need to tell you something that's honest enough. And like almost all programs, I would say this. This includes all of our welfare programs of one sort or another. We have 54 of them here in the United States. We almost always start at the moment. We almost never go back and look at the causal factor. If you never go back and try to figure out why are these families and these persons in this predicament now, do you think we would ever set up any kind of programs to preclude that from happening in the future? I think not. It is a gyroscope. It is spinning, and it is not going to stop. And so, anytime I see a person like our guest tonight, who is a willing donor, contributor of her time, her ingenuity, her car knowledge, all the people she knows to contribute to these people, and doesn't ask them whether they are a rotten, good-for-nothing bum who just don't want to work, or they're a person whose circumstances beyond any reasonable control to put them in the position they're in. I really admire that. So I'll open with it, I'll close with it. All the other stuff in between is just kind of my personal garbage, because I've seen the left and the right and the in-between. And I'm more of a skeptic than our speaker is because of that. But I'm also an optimist, and I also continue to help. So thank you so very much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Well, I suppose I should have asked you if you knew Rich Sheridan when I had the chance in the Q&A. Rich spent a lot of time down in front of the Dallas City Council. I met him down there when I was doing some video work for some causes down there. He has very little good to say about the Dallas City Council's treatment of the homeless. And I've seen several cases where, for instance, the Dallas City did some kind of a homeless cleanup or passed some laws, and then the next thing I know, Jim, we might use that again. I don't know if you need to shut that off.
Okay. I'll just leave it.
Okay. And, then I'm over in Fort Worth, and the same homeless that used to be in Dallas that, they cleaned up the streets, they're over in Fort Worth now. So, I'm recognizing the same faces, and I don't know exactly why they had to move, but, and then I know that there was some big cleanup of the tent cities and so forth, and the next thing I know was I was with a rather unique man, my violin instructor, who one evening around midnight, there'd been a cold snap. He went down, I don't know how many hundreds of dollars he distributed. He just started going down there handing out 20s in south of the Metroplex area. There are literally people just passed out on the pavement in a cold snap, and if they had any kind of cover at all. And there were groups of 10 and more, nearly 20 people sometimes in some of the groups. And so it's, that's being caused by people passing laws or, policies or things like that, where, and I understand if you want to have a clean city and you want to increase business and tourism or whatever, but I've done some world travel, and you go other places in the world, and there are homeless and there are beggars pretty much everywhere. It's a thing of life. Now, one thing I did notice is I was doing some drone footage work with someone I'm working with now, and we started looking up, getting a drone's eye view of some of the neighborhoods we were in, and then we went to Google Maps, and there was some article talking about the hobo camps. If you start looking at the city of Dallas, there are all these little wooded areas.
Yeah.
And you can go back through Google Map history, and you can see how these camps, they'll be in one area and then they'll kind of move over here and so forth. I don't know how safe it is to go check on some of them. Some of those camps are pretty elaborate.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we've got a much healthier, I'd say much more robust homeless population than anyone really has any idea about. You only see what you see. And there's a lot to hide. At one of our meetings over at the previous address over there, Nathan was talking about the alligator problem in Dallas. And I think a friend of his wanted to hunt alligators, and he got a hunting license, paid the tax stamp to go hunt alligators in Tennessee. Nathan said, "Why are you going to Tennessee to hunt alligators? We've got them right here." And the guy said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, I can tell you right where you can go. And it's right within the city here." He went down and he bagged a 12-footer. And he used up his entire hunting quota there, hunting alligators within Dallas, the city of Dallas. And so Nathan was speculating what those alligators were feeding on. You really don't want to know. But I'm a little, I try not to be judgmental. I'm actually much more judgmental trying to tithe in my church than I am doing kind of my own tithing to people begging at the corner. And I don't know if they need it for their beer or their drugs or whatever. I try not to be sitting there in the judgment seat and say, if they're out there, they're asking for money, I'm going to, out of my heart, I'm going to give them, what I can, and maybe some kind, maybe that charity will add up to something, and they'll have a change of heart and a betterment of their life. So, but yeah, we have a major issue going on here. I have several friends who work. I know I'm going to see Monday if I can go meet one of my friends from Fort Worth down at the Union Gospel Mission. He works down there, and one of the other pastors I've been following for a while, he is a regular at Salvation Army. And as far as I know, those are both good organizations. I don't have the highest respect for some of the other organizations. You get feedback from some of the street people. They don't like some of the Dallas facilities. Like they go in there, they want to give you shots, they want to do this to you, they want to do that to you, and they just don't want to have any part of it. And it's very heavy-handed, very authoritarian, and they don't appreciate that. I would say the best begging I ever had was one lady, middle-aged lady, I was going through Fair Park, and she's begging at one of the stoplights there, and I reached in my pocket. I think I gave her a $5, and she said that's not enough. I'm like, what do you mean that's not enough? It's $5. She said, well, it's getting up on the time when they close the doors, and I need $10 to get into the shelter over there, or I'm going to be out here with all these men, you know. I'm like, well, I don't want to leave the gal out here. Gave her $2 more. That's all I could do. But I thought, well, that's the best line I've ever heard.
Man.
Well, I appreciate people who do what you do in an organized manner, because you're helping people that you get to know, and you know what their needs are. I used to go downtown and pick people up on Thanksgiving and Christmas and take them home to feed them. And I usually got 3, 4, 5 takers, whatever, something like that. But in the later years that I was doing that, I got some interesting responses. I stopped was walking across a parking lot, I guess, and there was some guy sitting there, and I said, would you be interested in a free Thanksgiving dinner? And he says, no, I don't believe I'd be interested. So, however homeless he was, apparently he didn't feel any need to be helped like that. I've had numerous interesting experiences. I mean, I've taken, some woman who said she was homeless, taken her to a hotel, and bought her a room for a night, and she was acting like she was expecting me to spend the night with her or something like that.
Well, it seems like it.
Sorry, honey, not my cup of tea. But if you actually work with homeless people, you start finding out there's a whole variety of issues you have to deal with. It's not just one size fits all. There are people that, I picked a guy up once, I picked him up for Thanksgiving and said, if you ever need, or Christmas maybe, I said, if you ever need help, give me a call. I gave him my card or whatever. And one guy called me about New Year's, so I went down and picked him up. And he stayed with me and my roommate for about 2 months. He got a job, and between my roommate and I, we got him to work. And he was always bragging about how he could survive. He knew how to get food out of dumpsters and stuff like that. And he was working for like a month, I think, at least. And we were getting him to work. And one day he just disappeared. And I think what happened was that he realized that he was actually going to be able to get a regular job, get a bus pass and make it to work, and actually he had to change his lifestyle. And I think he just bailed. He wasn't interested in doing that. He was more interested in just surviving because he knew how to do that. And there's many other stories. And I've done things like, buy a hotel for some lady who was off of Northwest Highway and 635 one day, and she just, some people just look really pitiful. So I stopped and drove around the bridge and parked and said, okay, what do you need? She said, well, I need some milk, but, I couldn't keep it because it would, it'd spoil or whatever. So I ended up buying her a hotel room for a couple nights. And then the proprietor of the hotel says, well, I don't want you having a bunch of men coming in and out of that door, you know? And so then I started asking myself, well, what am I doing here? Am I aiding and abetting bad behavior? You know, so it's my policy to not give money as much as I can. If you need something, if you need gas, I'll buy it. And I've done that. You know, I've given people, I put my credit card in the thing and let them fill their car up or whatever and stuff like that. Because I know where that money's going. It's going in their tank, and you know, so they can do that. And then some people, you just know they're going to buy drugs or whatever. But there was one instance which I thought was very illustrative. I was at a meeting for a designer society, which I'm a designer, and one guy said, man, this guy's asking me for help to fix his car, but I don't know what to do. So I told him, well, what you do is you find out where his car is, and you go over there and you find out what this car really needs. And then, you know, if his car is really there and the mechanic says it really needs, you know, certain work, then you pay the mechanic to do the work, and his car's fixed, and you've helped him, and you know you've actually helped him. And that's exactly what happened. The guy said that that's what he did, and the guy really was in need, and he did have a car that needed work, and he was able to help him do that. So that's my policy, is to not give money, find out what the need is, and take care of the need. And there was another instance, I was at Fry's Electronics, and a lady comes up and says, oh, you can give me a couple of bucks, you know, I gotta get my car going and all that. And I said, what's wrong with your car? And she said something, whatever it was, and there was a Christian Brothers Automotive right across the parking lot. And I said, can you drive it, you know, over there? She said, oh yeah, I could do that. I said, tell you what, I'll meet you over there and I'll pay for the repair. Well, I went over there and she never showed up.
Yeah.
So that tells me that's not what she needed. So my policy is not to give money, to find out what the need is and to take care of it. And I'm a little conflicted when I see people begging on the street corner, because I keep hearing stories where somebody's sitting in McDonald's and this lady comes in and says, man, I made $72 an hour, you know, begging. And it's like, you know, I don't want to help that, you know. So, but anyway, so my policy is don't give money, give help. Find out what the need is and take care of it if you can.
Amen.
All right. Well, speaking as someone who was homeless,
Palms.
right after the war in London, a third of all houses either disappeared, so half wrecked or needed repair. And so we were one of the families that, by circumstance, I was about 7, my sister was 6, and we were walking around, and my sister said, take us home. There was no home to go to. We went to a shelter that looked horrible, and of course, because we had relatives in London, so we bumped into this one and that one. And finally, our poorest relative gave us a room, one room, 10 foot by 10 foot, and we lived there for about a year and a half until, you know, we found an apartment. So I know what it's like to be homeless. The subject, the technical subject that covers all this is socioeconomics. Socioeconomics. Now, I've said this before, but the capitalist system, according to that student called Marx, said that the capitalist system always gives the appearance of a surplus population. Okay? There are always going to be, the way the system works is it's always going to have a surplus population. Now, what, Jim, you said, like, the numbers are quite clear. According to the Federal Reserve, full employment is at 4%. When it's the full 4%, oh well, it's full employment. Now, we know that that's not quite true. The number is at least double that. So what's that mean in numbers? Okay. Well, it translates to about 10 million people. They're always out of work. And of course, what we have seen, and I can talk about London as well, so this applies to England as well, we've had a growing situation whereby the peak median wage happened in 1973. And before that, basically, the median wage kept pace almost exactly with the growth in the GDP. After that, it fell away. So the GDP was growing, but the median wage was stagnant, and so on. And I think right now, the median wage, people are worse off than they were before the crash in 2008. And what's happened is, because of globalization and so on and so forth, and the sheer greed of corporations and businesses in general, you have the precariat. I mean, even middle-class jobs, working corporations, it's a nightmare. I mean, you know, there is no, the notion was, when people were young over here, in the 50s, 60s, well, you joined a corporation, or you worked in the railroad yard, or you worked for Ford or somebody. It was like lifetime employment. And father went there, son went there, etc. No longer true. No longer true. Don't count on any permanent work anymore. You won't have of course, and since healthcare is tied to employment, lose your job, and of course you have since Reagan appeared, promising stuff like trickle-down economics that we've now seen by this genius called Trump. But we've seen what happens. It's in 30-odd years I've seen Thatcher in England and Reagan here. And it's been a rolling disaster for most. And I go to England and the people ask me, can you get me a job? And I go down to East Dallas, same thing. Please get me a job. You know, no wonder people turn to opioids and drugs and all the rest of it. It's not surprising to me. Okay. Also, yeah, you know, if you know your country cares about you, as the socialist government did after the war in England, provided housing, education for free, right through I have 3 degrees that were paid for by a socialist government, for example. You know, you feel supported by the country. Here, none of that. You're supported by nobody. You know, go whistle, folks. And vote for Trump because he's going to bring back the jobs and make you wonderful again. And the slogan should be that, you know, make the Trump family first, and to hell with everyone else.
Here, here.
And that's exactly what it is. And if you think this guy is going to help this country, you must be, I don't know, you're missing something in your head. You know,
The Romanovs.
you know, really speak. I mean, this tax plan. I mean, yeah, it's certainly going. You know, it really is. It really is laughable. You know, yes, and there's another street. But you know, this is a situation. You know, and it's caused by socioeconomics. It's caused by the wrong policy. Now, yeah, you will have people who don't want to work, who sponge off the system. But the real sponges are the guys at the top.
Right.
They are the real sponges. Okay? I mean, this healthcare system, right? The guy that runs United Healthcare walked away with $100 million a year the other year. I mean, goodness me. I mean, you know, the absolute greed of these people is beyond me. You know? And, you know, that's another matter. You know, we need a single-payer healthcare system. A system determined and run by insurance companies is vile and evil. Okay? And I think Americans better look in the mirror, because the way this country is run, no Western country runs like this. Just doesn't. Okay? And until and unless America gets some Christianity about the place, They have lots of religion, but little Christianity. So until it bucks up, looks in the mirror, and actually works as a country and cares about its people, because a country is only as good as the sum of its people. To hell with the billionaires, because they'll never amount to anything. You know? So yes, this is a socio-economic problem. It can be solved. It should be solved. But I see no party, really, Democrat or Republicans, with a decent plan to solve it. But it could be solved. Yes, and I did live in a socialist country after the war. I felt loved and helped when I needed it. And by God, we needed it. By God, we did. We were starving nearly, frozen. I was ill, my dad was ill. You should live through it after being bombed for 5 or 6 years. And I must say, and I must tell you this, America put economic thumb on Britain and squeezed the life out of it. And I'll talk about that, because it was under FDR that happened. And I'll talk about that, because it's hard to believe, but that's true. Anyway, but I came here, as you know, nearly 50 years ago. I was a hired hand. I've done very well. So I have no complaints, but I knew the score. But I had several different jobs, but I had the skills to go with it. Now, this is what we need to have every kid trained to do something or the other. We need apprenticeships where they learn a trade if they want, or an academic course if they want, as they do in Germany. So, you know, there's a whole realm of things that has got to get right. Because otherwise, like England, you have a huge trade deficit, and what does that mean? You have to pay for that by selling your assets. So as I said before, in England, because of moron Thatcher, she privatized all public services, and guess who owns the public services? Well, no. France owns the power system. The water supply in London is owned by the Germans. Spain owns London Airport. And every day of the week, another business is sold off, like ARM, that made chips to go in all your cell phones, was sold off to the Japanese a few months ago. So that's what happens when you don't have a proper socio-economic policy. And, you know, it's a shame what's happened. I feel sorry. You know, yes, no doubt there are scoundrels on the street, blah, blah, blah. But behind that, why did this happen? Why is there so much family abuse? So, you know, why is all this happening? Well, a lot of it is just economic strain and stress. You know, people just give up. You know, they walk away from it. Well, I for one am disgusted by it. I see this, and it doesn't need to be this way. But until we have a party in this country that cares about its people as a whole, and not just Wall Street on the one hand, or the billionaires on the other, you know, it will never change. And we do have a peasant class that is easily duped by people like Trump. And I'm afraid they're going to get what they deserve, which is nothing, actually. You know, squared. So anyway, I've said enough.
Well, John really didn't leave very much for me to say. I want to thank you for your presentation. And I'm going to just relate some experience. I had the luck of working for the Office of Economic Opportunity. And I worked there 2 years. And that's when I saw what poverty is. And what John says, we create poverty. And with the war on poverty, there was no intention to alleviate poverty, because at that time people made money from poverty programs, food stamps, health care with Medicaid. So a lot of people are very economically successful because of poverty. And when we look at the bill that passed the Senate last night and see who it helped, someone went down and said, and the president's going to be helped a great deal by this bill.
Yeah.
And the people who are going to hurt are those persons that earn between 50,000 and 100,000. And what's going to happen, I know most of you were around in 1986 when they passed the law eliminating the deductions. That was the greatest tax increase in my life. It's going to happen again. And that's one of the, there are a number of programs like yours. I was served on the board for about 9 years of Family Gateway. Have you heard of that program?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's, I was treasurer, vice president, president for that time. It's a program that's very successful. They have almost an 80% rate of bringing people in off the streets and training them and get them in jobs and homes are able to rent. One of the reasons poverty is so bad in Dallas is if you don't have a certain amount of income, you can't rent nothing unless someone co-signs. So that's making, if you're earning less than $20,000 a year, you can't hardly rent nothing unless it's in public housing. And so that's the problem we have. Dallas is an expensive city to live in. If you're on the margin, the $750 or whatever they're now, no, you can't rent nothing on that. So those are the things that I agree. There are ways we can look at causes. Someone brought up causes. There are causes why. In England and France and Germany and other nations, many of the Asian nations, they have 2 tracks. By the time you finish middle school, they test you and they determine where you go to technical field or the academic field. And what we've been fighting is desegregation, segregation, and all this, where there's no, for the people who were being segregated, was no anything we should learn nothing. And that's what's coming back about us. Another thing is going to create a lot of hurt for us is the men and women coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. Their minds are messed up. And the cause of that is we're getting involved in the war that we shouldn't be involved. But we're all going to pay for it. And it's going to be painful. So we, in fact, as you said, social economic systems create poverty for groups of people. And that's what we have. The last paradigm in the first of 2016, early 2016, they came out with a report that they used, I'm not going to use the terminology, but working people was what they should have been saying. They were making a race issue out of it, working white men, but black men, Latino men, and women all worked in heavy industry. And they all were hurt the same way. But the focus of the study showed that they had the highest mortality rate, white men between 45 and 55, of any demographic group in the country. And the cause of that is they were in heavy industry. And I have I have 2 brothers. One worked for what's called Magnolia, now it's ExxonMobil, and another worked in a steel company. And they trained in, by 1955, Mobil integrated and said anybody who wanted to bid for jobs could. And my brother did it. He was successful. My youngest brother worked in the steel industry, and they trained him a skill. But if all the steel companies go, there's no demand for your skill. And that's what caught those men with outsourcing and factory relocation. Their jobs. They lost everything. Their home, their respect. And when you lose your respect, you get on drugs, you have fights in the home, you blame other people, and what do we do for them? Nothing. And as you said, those jobs are gone forever. You gotta have a skill. And maybe we need to have a system in middle school. Most of our middle school students don't know what they're even thinking about. And then when, you can take electives and make yourself strong in the area that you have an interest in, but some students do that and they do quite well, but the majority don't. So we gotta create an appetite for people to want to learn, a quest for knowledge. And that knowledge should be leading to something that they want to do. And in terms, intern programs, the other kind of programs where you learn on the job, that's what most people did in heavy industry, learn on the job. And we can still do that. So those are some of the problems. I wrestle with some of the same things you wrestle with. And we have a Bible study that almost comes up every Wednesday night. I seldom give some money in a cup, but I give pretty substantial to organizations I know that help people. And that's the way I deal with it. That's what my heart tells me to do. Because I don't have enough to help that person. I may buy them a beer or something like that. I may even give them a room or something like that. But right now, if I give a woman a room, I'm in trouble.
Bad trouble.
You have to be a Congress critter.
So you got to be careful of what you do. And all this is because of greed, and we think we got to be better than somebody else. And that's something we shouldn't do. But we do have a problem. It's much larger than what it's saying. And we need to deal with it. Like unemployment is 4 point something. But they don't count on the person who go to the what's called workforce commission now, is looking for a job and drawing unemployment compensation. They have another way to do some kind of estimate, but that's not. Many people are giving up because they don't have the skills and they're tired of being turned out. They just give up. And so those are the issues we have. So I really have a great deal of respect for people who don't demonize people who are unfortunate. And like you said, it could be you or any of us. Any of us. We have an economy that's interrelated, and what hurts one group eventually will hurt us all.
That's right.
And we better think in terms of what's best for all of us, and not just what's for a few. Thank you.
I really applaud what you're doing with your efforts. The thing that strikes me about how effective what you do is that it's very local. You're very personally involved with the people and with the organizations that you work with. The larger we get into governments, the less control the people have and the more corporations take over control of that. And that's why the larger the government, the more evil it is. That's just, to me, a standing rule. And it is this thing of greed and lust for power that is like a virus in the human consciousness. It's like a heroin. You get those two things mixed together and it's never satiated, it just grows. Now, there's good and bad in everything. And I was having a discussion last night with a friend concerning the fact that I think it's here in Dallas, I know it's in Texas, there is a school. It's private, it's not really officially organized, but it takes people and teaches them how to be on that street corner, limping properly, as they all do, and wearing Raggedy Ann clothes and their toes sticking out of the shoes, and all of this stuff that makes you feel sorry for them. And then if they're over in a more expensive area like Laurel Hills down in San Antonio or Highland Park here, it's a whole different kind of a thing. They're appealing to the college crowd there, and they have a whole completely different approach. This school teaches these people to do this. And from what I have heard from this gentleman last night and from other people is that typically these people out on the street who are panhandling are bringing in anywhere from $300 to $700 a day. Now, 500 average, $500 a day is $120,000 a year. I think that most people could live comfortably on that. Now, using that, since that is going on, I think that with what you're doing, that people could be trained to clearly do this kind of thing, to bring money into organized shelters. And this would be far more honest, and that could then be used to expand the kind of things you're doing. The giving out of books is educational. Well, it could be more formal education provided in these things, and the people in them could be compelled more to contribute to what needs to be done, to mow the lawn or wash the dishes or whatever. And jobs could be created in this way. And bringing in, have the number of people out there on the street, $500 a day, contributing to that would soon be a lot of money when you get a dozen of them out there. I think this could be a good plan. And so I think I'll see if this friend knows that organization by name and address, and I'll get it to you if I can. Because I just think using that technique would be excellent for getting the money in to do something much bigger in this area. And I think it needs to be done. You know, of all the civilizations that I've known of, and I don't know a whole lot about them all, one of the most successful is Switzerland. I had a guy who used to come around, I had a manufacturing business, and he would come around doing sales work. I've mentioned this before. And he told me one day that his father had just retired from the company, the one company he had worked his whole life in. And the combination of his, what would be the equivalent of Social Security from the government and retirement benefits from this company, meant that he and his wife, the fellow's parents, were going to retire for the rest of their lives on the highest level of income of their lives, which is the way in Switzerland they have it set up. They care about their people. There is a committee in Norway that whenever a piece of legislation is proposed, it has to go first to this committee, and the committee analyzes what effect will this law have on family life in Norway, and if they don't like it, it cannot be passed. They care about their people. I think, again, one of the most successful civilizations, small countries that I know anything about was Libya under Gaddafi. Now, he came in as a dictator, a military man, because there were two big warring tribes like the McCoys and the Hatfields killing each other all the time. And he went in with the military and he put a stop to that. And he created a tribal council like our Congress and said, okay, all of you people who have a problem, you bring it to the tribal council and we'll all vote on it and come up with a solution. He brought peace in that country. It came from the most poverty-stricken nation in Africa to very soon being the wealthiest nation and the most peaceful. There was no Sharia law imposed on everybody. Women did not have to wear burqas. They could own and drive their own cars. They could rise to any position in a business that they were qualified to do, or they could start and own their own businesses. Blacks in Libya were equal to everyone else. No discrimination whatsoever until our dear CIA paid $250,000 Al-Qaeda and armed them to come in and destroy that nation, principally for the Federal Reserve, i.e. Rothschild International Banking System that has fiat money. And Libya was on a gold-backed dinar. We used to be a silver-backed currency in this country. And what we have now with the Federal Reserve still is totally unconstitutional. And I think on a larger level, that is the most important thing we need to address, is the banking system. And do like they did in Iceland when they had their 2008 collapse. Everybody by the thousands got pots and pans and spoons and surrounded all their government buildings, beat on those pots and pans in shifts 24/7, drove their entire government out, elected all new officials, the people did, and they, the last I read, have 26 of those international bankers in prison today. The rest of them fled the country. And they're prospering again. They quickly came back because they got rid of that fiat money banking system. I can't think of anything more important for us to accomplish in this world, and thank God for the internet because it's waking people up. You can read a lot about all of that. The Rothschilds, a very evil family as far as I can perceive. In any event, totally, A to Z. Yes, really. And when you look at, just go on the internet and Google down call down a book. It's a free PDF called All Wars Are Bankers' Wars. Another one, The Nameless War. Bring these books down and read them. They're short. Get a copy of G. Edward Griffin's book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, the best treatise I think ever written on the whole history of banking and how the Federal Reserve fits into it. Every American needs to know this. I think every student in this country needs to pass an exam on that book. And if you haven't read it, you don't understand what's really going on, in my opinion. But I think the more that we can bring our activities like what you're doing down to the local level, where we're watching the results of it individually of what we do, then we can see more quickly and we can arrange and organize what we're doing to actually benefit people rather than pay millions into these corporate executives who, as whoever mentioned it, walk away with $100 million a year and so forth. This is just outrageous to me. I mean, when I went through SMU Law School, it was $5,000 a year. And the last I heard over there now for an undergraduate, it's $62,000 a year to go to that school. This is outrageous. Well, you know, the president of the college is probably getting $1 million or $2 million a year or $5 million. It's this greed and lust for power that has taken over in this country. And that's why I don't like the term capitalism, because it focuses on capital. What I like is the idea that this country started under, which is free enterprise. And that's where all the moms and pops stores and businesses can survive, because they're not run over by the Walmarts. You know, some states have banned Walmart from their state. I think that's great. In any event, I think what you're doing is, pardon me?
I said we agree on that.
Oh, yes. We agree on a few things, John. Certainly, I respect you very much. In any event, I really appreciate what you're doing. And I think if you think about that technique, it just might be very, very useful in bringing a lot of money to do good things.
Well, I think the real key point of our talk tonight and many of the comments is act locally. And even if we think globally, we really need to act locally. And I wouldn't be getting up to make another comment if we hadn't had a sales pitch for socialism here, which I can usually count on our Brit friend here to do. But fond memories of the aftermath of World War II, the kind of help you received there in Britain. What I would say is study history. If you really look at the economic history, you see that the dynamic economy, well, in past times, really Britain drove a lot of it, but in past, post-World War II, really, the American economy raised up the economies of the world. And it really was the prosperity that we had here, and especially the middle class.
What happened?
What happened is Keynesian economics. What happened was the devaluation of the dollar to a point where things turn around and our devalued currency plundered all the economies of the world.
It was breaking into religious rock.
So, you know, we can have this discussion. I look at you and I have compassion. You did write a book, and I know my friends who have written a book, they are encumbered by the walls they've set up there, and they don't seem to be able to go beyond that. So. But someday we can have a good discussion about free market economics.
Someday you'll write a book and we will.
And both in my preface and in my ending notes, I will be admonishing myself, just as the Caesar. The Caesar would have someone riding in his chariot after the victory and saying, "These things too shall pass."
I think I'm the last one standing, so I want to thank our speaker for doing a great job here tonight. Got us all thinking and what to talk about and how to respond to what she had to say here. My mother used to say that during the Depression, you could buy a lot for $1, but nobody had $1. That was the problem. Everybody was out of work. And we're suffering somewhat the same thing happening again. We've got so many people out of work. We have homeless people. We have different things. We always had homeless people, but now we have more homeless people than we ever did before. Our economy is taking a turn for the worse in that sense. We're not taking, as John said, we're not taking care of the people in our country. And I was a chairman for a labor union for 20 years. I understand a lot of things, but what strikes me is this: is there's a constant, well, if you go back in history, I know John here talked about it's got to be local, but around the turn of the century, I'm talking about 18th to 19th century, 20th century, people were out of work. There was automation. There was the Haymarket riots in Chicago. It was over an 8-hour workday. That was part of it. And the end result was that they finally passed the Adamson Law, which established an 8-hour day in the railroad industry. And that lasted until 1938 when they passed the Fair Labor Standards Act, which reduced the work week from 60 to 40 hours and the work day from 10 to 8 hours and put people back to work. And it was more for people. It put more people to work and we had a stronger economy. But since then, we've had globalists. We've had corporations leaving town, going overseas where labor costs are cheaper. That's our constant going on all the time. Apple produces everything in China. They don't produce anything here. So we don't have any jobs here. The end result is if a union asks for a wage increase because costs have gone up, everything else has gone up, the corporation just leaves town and goes where labor costs are cheaper. They left there holding the bag. They have no job. They have nothing. That's what's happened in this country. And that's a lot of what's happened. That's a lot of the spin down of what's happened. So you say, what can we do to correct it? In my view, each economy in each country, as soon as you allow the globalists to take over and go somewhere else, you're in trouble. So I think that we have we have a problem with our Congress. We got the best Congress money can buy. That's one of our problems. And our congressmen, they'll vote. The corporation control the Congress. By definition, that's fascism, if you think about it. Corporation controlling government. And with corporations controlling the government, the people of this country are not getting what they asked for. Look what's passing in Congress right now. We can blame Republicans for that, but even if it was Democrats, they'd be doing the same thing because they're owned by the corporations. That's what's happened. And that has to change. So what can make it change? What can we do to make, what would Congress vote for to change things? In my view, if we had free elections, last 90 days of a general election, the congressmen some challenges would beat some incumbents, and then the congressmen would end up representing the people instead of representing the people buying their vote in Washington. Then maybe we could put tariffs on corporations overseas and get the jobs back here. And then maybe we could shorten the workday in this country. We've got 25 million people in this country either unemployed or underemployed. That's a real fact. And if we're not going to take care of these people, we're not going to take care of our country, we're not going to have a country. We're going to be owned by everybody else. So that's what I have to say. And you're next.
Bravo! Get him, Irishman.
I want you to talk about what
You get to respond. You get the last word.
Oh, okay.
You get to respond to all these comments, whatever you want to say. It's now you get to say whatever you want.
You could address the school of Winnipeg.
Where is it?
Yeah, I'm going to find out about that school that teaches that.
To them.
Yeah, I had not heard of that. I will share this with you. I am on 3 different committees for the Irving ISD, and one of them is District Improvement Committee. And I have said for a very long time that every student who graduates high school should have a marketable skill.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and we could make that happen. In fact, in Irving, we have everything from robotics to, if you want to be an attorney, if you want to be in the medical field, and many of these things you can become certified before you even go off to college. This can happen at the high school level. And here in Dallas, our magnet schools, we just need more of them. And instead of the students, I know in Irving, they come to the Singley Academy through a lottery. Well, that means some of the kids don't get to take what they want. And so that's where we need to focus as well. I heard the chancellor of Tarrant County College talk Monday before last, and he used a term I had never heard of before. I've heard of white collar and I've heard of blue collar, but he was talking about new collar. And he was referring to new collar as the jobs that haven't even been created yet. And that was very mind-boggling that things are happening that fast, and that we have a population of people who, we can just go so far and then we don't even know what the jobs are going to be in the future. So we've got to be very forward-thinking on doing that. If you have not seen the movie or read the book, Same Kind of Different as Me, I hope that you read the book. It is a true book. Somebody mentioned the Union Gospel Mission over in Fort Worth. Well, Ron Hall is an art director. He's a dealer, art dealer, and he befriended through his wife a gentleman by the name of Denver Moore. This is a true story. And they befriended Denver, who was homeless. And you're going to have to read the book and see the movie, but the book is much better, of course. But I'm sad to say that Denver passed away before the movie came out, but he knew that the movie was going to be. So everybody has something to contribute, and you'll see where Denver Moore, in Same Kind of Different as Me, made a difference as well. I heard somebody mention about felons who couldn't get housing and that sort of thing. This past year I found out there is at the Dallas Public Library on Young Street every Thursday night there's a group called Cornbread Hustle, and it is designed for felons, and they can go there and learn about entrepreneurship, and so for them to move forward with their life. And so if you know of a felon who wants to make a difference in their life, have them to visit. It's called Cornbread Hustle at the Dallas Public Library. Just a quick little side note. Several years ago, I heard this wonderful guitarist on the side of the street, and I was just amazed at how good he could play the guitar and sing and all of that. And so I went up to him and I said, I've got a birthday coming up pretty soon. Do you ever go to folks' houses? He said, yes, ma'am. And you could tell that he had been out in the sun a lot. His skin was like leather. I've never had such a wonderful birthday. He came in, he played for all of our friends, and then I took him back, when the party was over. So don't sell some of these people short. Okay, and I've taken some notes here, and it has been a wonderful, wonderful evening. And if you want to get involved with Many Helping Hands, please, we could use your help. Our calling they can use the help. The gal at our calling is called Callie, and she's always looking for folks. And the facility here in Dallas is much larger than the church facility that we have in Irving. Saying all of that, I want to leave you with this thought, and this thought comes to us from 1 Peter 4:10. Serve one another with whatever gift each of you has received.
Isn't she great?
Well, that's it for tonight. Our speaker will be here if you want to talk to her, and they kick us out here at 10:30, just so you know. But we'll see you next week. That's the end of the formal meeting.
I was with her